Good morning and welcome back. So I'm going to start actually roughly in the same concepts as on page 70, 71. We're looking at another program and we want to look at something that Python can do that's very interesting. We can interpret things as true or false. So our if-then statements really need to come back and say, is something true? Is it false? Well, we're going to do a little interesting take on this and at least poke fun at one of the few amusing things I think that's going on is this giant toilet paper hoarding thing, which I don't understand. So instead of a maitre d' program, we're going to write a welcome to Sam's Club and how do you buy toilet paper at this point. So a couple of things, make sure you always start your programs out with comments with your name and other things. I've had a couple people turn things in and did not do that, so you will see a comment from me about that. I'll probably tell you to reset them. The other thing, really quickly, make sure your program runs. If your program runs and ends up with an error or it doesn't display what you want, especially if you're able to turn it in early, make sure that you can figure out how to solve that. Not if you turn it in and you say, I couldn't get it to run, that doesn't A, give you that learning opportunity, and B, it's going to affect your grade quite pragmatically. So make sure that they run. Try them. That's why I encourage you to start early to make sure that they do run. One of the things I've noticed is people that have turned in things is make sure that your indenting is done properly. So we'll look at some of those blocks and I'll show you that again really quickly. So welcome to Sam's Club. We do not have any of the precious toilet paper. So I'm gonna create a variable called money, and I'm gonna assign it a value. And I'm going to assign it a value from an input. And we know input is a function that we can call, and we can put a statement in there that says to tip the Sam man. We'll call him that, whatever. And so I'm getting an input. Now, I can do this one of two ways, because what I want to do is I want to have this value as a number, and probably an integer works well. And so the easiest way, I think, is to just put the function here, converting it to an integer. But that works exactly the same thing as if I had said the integer of money. Can't type this morning. That does exactly the same thing, that function. I think it's a little cleaner, just throw it all up in one. So we get the input, it is a string. All of our inputs are always strings. We get that string input, we convert it to an integer. So now money has hopefully some kind of value. Well, I want to interpret this in an if statement. So I'm going to say if money. Now, traditionally I would say if it's over $20, maybe we can find some toilet paper. But Sam Man is getting kind of desperate. And he really is just going to say if money. That seems weird. If money. So what we're really saying is if there is any dollar value at all, if there's any numeric value in there, then we're going to consider this a true statement. So if it exists, and we're going to show you how we can scale through all kinds of things with it. So this is a really handy function inside of Python. And we're going to print, okay, you can have one roll of TP. So the other piece then, I'm going to do an else. So there's a second side to this, and I'm going to print, nope, still out of TP. Now, one of the things I see that we're still doing with several people that have turned in things or sent to me over email, make sure you put this input statement at the end. It doesn't have to be exactly the same way. You can come up with your own clever one. Press any key to quit. So what this does, and again, let me remind you, is that holds my program open. So if I run this natively, it ends. I also probably should put some comments in. When I'm doing new code or I will put comments in trying to keep myself straight. So let's see what happens if this runs. See what kind of interesting typos I have in there. So first I have to save it. Let me go back to my documents and Python Spring. And we'll call this toilet paper. Hit the caps lock there. Notice I didn't put any spaces in. The other thing I've seen is some people are still turning in things and putting in a space in there. Make sure that your names of your files are all concatenated. In other words, there's no spaces. So now it runs. Welcome to Sam's Club. We do not have any other precious toilet paper. Well, if I just hit enter, it's going to give me an error. Oh no. So we need to check out and see what's happening there. So why did it give us an error? Well, in this particular case, we didn't actually put anything in, and it's trying to convert that blank string in there. And so the conversion utilities aren't necessarily perfect. And we'll show you some error trapping ways that we can do that. If I put in a dollar value, all right, you can have one roll of toilet paper. So it's going to convert that. So I encourage you to experiment with these and try things. So if I put in $0, it says, nope, still out of toilet paper because there's no value with it. So the key phrase there, though, is this input here. If I have an input and I put in something that it can't convert into a base 10 number or an integer, it's going to hiccup there. And we'll eventually get to some points where we can show you how to fix some of those errors and do some error trapping. And part of the error trapping we're going to do is looking at how do we do things in inside of a loop to do that. So let's move on to, let's start some more loops. So on page 72, 73, they talk about doing a break and a continue. I will say that this is not really good coding practice, this finicky counter program that's in your book. Yes, we can actually break out of a loop. It is not a good way to do things. If you can create a program that has better structure, you don't really ever need to use that. Where we might use them is if in an error trapping that we want to be able to break out of an infinite loop that we've accidentally created. So I'm going to create a new one here. If I can find my cursor. So new file. And just close that one out, move this one over. So I'm going to call this one finicky counter. And we want to ways to escape a loop. So first we're going to have some kind of a counter, in other words, sentinel value. And I'm going to set that equal to 0. So we're going to use that throughout this program. And I'm going to create a loop doing something a little different. So I'm going to say while true. And notice it colors it orange. But we didn't actually say what's going to be true. So something will be true. So let's see what happens here. So count equals count plus 1. And again, the book shows you the shortcut to doing the increments. In my brain, this makes more sense to me. And then we need to figure out how do we escape out of this loop. So right now, if I run this, so I always like to just throw in a print statement. Print. So let's see what happens if I run this. Let me go to the end of the program first, just out of sheer habit, and let's make sure we put in an input sure we have to save it. Oh, and notice what it does. It runs forever. And again, I told you over here on the left, if I need to get out of one, I can do the Control-C, and it will actually interrupt that. And notice what it did. It just ran forever and ever and ever. Because this while true says, oh, well, while something is true, we don't even define what it is. It's going to continue to run. Well, our book is going to give us a way that we can get out of here. And I'm going to leave my print in there for now. And notice in this while loop, anything at this indent level is going to run. So we can use our if statement. So if count is greater than 10, so now we've got another nested level in here. Then we're going to break. All right. So I'm going to run this right now and see what happens. So 5. So notice it did actually run a few and it exited out. Well, there's a lot of other ways we could have done this, and that's kind of my point here. So there is a continue statement, so we can actually use that also to restart our loop if we wanted to. And so what they're showing is if count is equal to 5, continue, and then they throw in another print with a count right there just so you can see it as it counts up. So I'm going to just use my editor here and go in and go chunk, and that just makes mine not run. So 1, 2, 3, 4, oh, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So it made it a little interesting. We stopped at 5, skipped it, and we went over the top. But again, I'm going to say that these are really not a general purpose. In fact, this is probably the only time that you'll use this in this class, is to show that you're doing a continue and a break. We'll show you how to use it as a way to find some errors in programs, but we want to create our code so it's a little more structured. So that's our finicky counter. Make sure you look at that and you've tried that. See if it does work. So we want to also look at in our program, can we create multiple ways to look at the same kind of data? So compound conditions. I'll leave that in there. So a compound condition, we can actually do a comparison on multiple pieces at the same time. So I've got my template set up here. We enter and we end. So I'm going to follow along on pieces of this, and I'm going to add some of my own commenting. So we're going to take some of our code that we've looked at before, and we're going to try to add some more pieces to it. So I'm going to get a variable called security, and I'm going to set that equal to 0. So we'll use that as we go through here. And I'm also going to use one called username, and in good housekeeping, I'm going to enter that as a 0. I really want username equal to input your username. But I'd like to make sure they actually put something in. And we can do that really easily. And so while these loops seem like they're a little complicated, it's as easy as doing this. So watch this. While not username. So as long as username doesn't exist, this loop is going to go and repeat. So we'll try that and I'll show you what I mean by this. So we don't have any other code in here right now, so I'm going to save it. And I just saved it that same name. Please enter your username. If I just hit enter, it's going to repeat until I actually put something in there. When it does, then it exits down through the program. So this is a handy way that we can force users to do some kind of an input for us. So we also want them to put in a password. So same structure, while not password, password equals input of please enter your password. So same structure. This forces people to put in both a username and a password. And again, we would actually do it in a live program a little differently. I'm going to, just out of sheer housekeeping, I'm going to set that equal to a blank so that we know that it will not have garbage in it at some point. And I'm going to do that up ahead of these. Your book puts it in between, doesn't make much difference. I like to put all these in one blank so I know where all my variables are at. Just my personal preference. So now we're going to actually say a couple of different pieces. So we're going to use an if statement so we can understand if. So if username equals, and we'll just use a couple of these out of the book, m.Dawson. And here's where the interesting part is. Then we go and password is equal to secret. Well, now we can cause an action to happen. Print hello, Mr. Dawson. And we could have more than one element in there because it's all in that same indent line here. So we could also then set security to equal a number. So Mr. Dawson has a security of number 5. Well, we could actually then use elifs. So just throwing one out there. s.anderson and password equals so Mrs. Anderson has a different security level. And so we could go on and on and on. So at the end, we could also do this as an else. So a failsafe saying something like, we didn't recognize you. And then we have our input at the end. And so if I run this, we can double check. So our username. So first I'm going to just do one that we know isn't going to work. Hey, it worked. Let's do m.Dawson. And it says, hello, Mr. Dawson, and it set security, and it did all these factions after what we set it up for. So pretty easy, handy way to use those loops. So this, again, is a loop. This is a loop. And the things that occur in there, in this case, it just keeps asking for enter your username, enter your username. And it shortcuts a lot of the things. Notice we don't have a priming input. We don't have to do that. We're able to shortcut a lot of those things using that in Python. So Python tries to make our life a little easier. So page 78, 79 talk about different types of operators, the ORs, the ANDs, and again they show you those truth tables. So you need to make sure you can work your way through those truth tables. We talk on page 80 about pseudocode. We've kind of beaten that one into the ground for you, but you really need to plan out your program ahead of time. So on page 81, there's some pseudocode for a Guess My Number game. And so we're going to create a Guess My Number game. So first we have to pick a number. While the player hasn't guessed the number, let the player guess, and then congratulate the player if he wins. So we need to break it down in some steps and see if we can do that. The next page says, oh, all right, let me break that pseudocode down a little more. Welcome the player, pick a number, ask the player for a guess, set the number of guesses. So we can do a couple of things in here to make this more interesting. And so we're basing this on page 82, and we're going to create a Guess My Number game. So I am going to do a file new and drag it over here on top of this. Guess My Number game. Again, just trying to get in that habit of doing those pieces here. So I know that I'm going to have to get a random number. So import random. Got it. So I also need to explain the game. Hopefully people can understand. Welcome to Guess My Number. We'll leave off some of those because I'd like to get to some of the content. All right, so the first thing we need to do is we need to come up with a number for an initial value. So I'm just going to say this block is set value for guessing. And so we need to set that number up. So the book calls it the number, which works. It's a valid variable. And we're going to set that equal to random.rand integer, somewhere between 1 and 100. So the next piece we're going to do is we're going to take a look at it here really quickly. And we're going to say, all right, we need to figure out and get a guess from one of our users. Hang on a second, my phone was ringing there on you. Have to deal with those all the time. It's probably somebody wanting to sell me car insurance or my warranty has expired. All right, so I need to get my initial guess. In other words, that priming the loop. So guess, we're going to set equal to, and again, I'm going to put this all in one statement. I'm going to turn it to an integer because whatever we take in is a string. Guess a number. And I'm going to set another value in here. I need another. And notice it didn't return all the way back, which kind of told me, hey, I didn't finish something up in there. So I'm going to do one called tries, and I'm going to set that equal to 1. That way I know how many guesses I have in there. So now I need a loop so that people can guess multiple times in there. So while, so to ask that loop to continue, I'm going to say while guess is not equal to the number. then these things are going to happen. So I also want it to tell me if I need to go higher or lower. And we've all played this game. So if guess greater than the number, I'm going to have it print lower. And then if I'm going to do that, I'm going to do an else, because it can really only be two conditions. It can either be higher or lower, because if it's exactly that number, this loop isn't going to run. So I can actually just do this way. I can say and then I can print alright, so inside this loop I also need to do a couple of other things. I have my initial one, my priming one. I guess you can't see my fingers pointing here. So up here is my priming input. In here we have to do a couple of things. I need to get a new value for guess, because if I don't, then this loop will just run forever. It's never going to change. So guess equals, but notice what I can do. Watch this. We all like to copy and paste. Well, I'm just going to do it there. And notice, even though I have an extra space, I'm still in this block, so that should function for me. And I also need to add one to tries. So tries equals tries plus 1. So that's all the items in my loop. The one thing in Python, I don't have to say, hey, end while. Once I come back to this outside, it's going to do that for me and say, oh, you're done with that loop. So print. So this will only run once we get out of that loop. So we've guessed the number. You guessed the number. And then we can actually put in the number so we can make sure we display it. And then we have a print of it only took you tries, number of tries. Alright, so I need one space there probably. Alright, so let's, and then at the end of our program we always have, what did I miss there? Oh, I need a quote mark, input, alright, so I'm going to look at this really carefully. I'm going to run through it and make sure things work in my head. So we set a number, we guess. If it's higher, we say lower. If it's higher than that, we say higher. Got it. Let's see what happens if I run this. We need to save it. We're going to call it guess. All right, so over here on the bottom, one of the things I could certainly do is I've added some blank lines up here, so I think I will do that actually just to make life. And that way it'll scroll up a little bit. So I'm going to run it now. Oh, didn't like something I did there. Hang on a second, let me end this. What did it not like about why? Alright, there we go. Alright, run. Alright, so now I moved it down a little bit. Still up on the bottom of the screen. So guess a number. So good practice, let's say we start in the middle. 75, 80, 90, 95, 99, 97. So you guess the number. 97, it only took you 7 number of tries. My English was really bad on those. But what we did was we created a really quick little game to guess numbers. Now, I need to go in and clean it up, obviously, and hopefully you guys will do that once you get it running. So now that I've got it running, I could come in here, I could say, oh, please guess a number. All right, I know I need to put a colon and a space just to make it cleaner. So down here I do the same thing, space. So that cleans up this to make it look a little better. I probably, you guessed, holy cow, apparently I was not using English. You guessed the number. So you guessed the number. It only took you, how about we eliminate the number of. All right, so now I've saved it again. So I made it run. 35, 20. So now we've got a program that kind of runs and can amuse us at any time. So it went from 97 to whatever. So here we've got a loop. This loop depends on that sentinel value to change. So we could also put in some other pieces out here. So what if I wanted to exit out of this loop if you guessed more than 10 times? So we wanted the program to say, oh, you guessed, but you only got a set number of tries. Well, we can actually put in a multiple piece here and tries less than 5. Let's just put 5 in so we know it'll fail. Alright, so this loop will only run if the guess does not equal the number and my tries are less than 5. So let's see what happens. So of course I have to save it. Guess a number. Oh. Here's what happened though. So I did get the loop to fail, but oh no. What happened here? It actually congratulated me. Even though I made this part correct, I didn't take into account that this code is always going to run. Yeah. So what I would need to do now is to fix this is I need to do a couple of more things. So watch this. So now I could put an if statement in. So if guess equals the number. So then I move these into that block for it only took you that number of tries. So the other option then for an else would be that you had not guessed it. Print are a foolish guesser and could not guess the number. Print the number was the, so at least you're telling them what the number was. Number. All right. The number was blah blah blah. All right. Off the top of my head, here we go. So please guess a number. 50, 40, 30, 20, 10. And it said, oh, you're a foolish guesser. You could not guess the number. So our loop worked. Now we just added some additional pieces to that. Well, let's see if I can actually guess it in 5 guesses. This might be interesting. So please guess a number. I'm going to go in the middle. So about halfway in between again. So I missed it there. I couldn't get it in 5 guesses. So you can do all kinds of things in there. So we took our basic program, we looked at it. So your homework for this week, somewhere I have that open in another 72 tabs here. See if I can drag it over there. grab the right course and the right homework. So your homework for this week, I drag it over here. You're going to create a program. Now, notice it does say week 9. I almost made the mistake of trying to change that and it would have been bad. So we moved it ahead. So you're really doing week 9's assignment in week 10, but we'll live. So I do need to change that. So I'm going to record this and I'm going to add that in there. So your assignment says you're going to write a program that flips a coin 1,000 times and lists how many heads or tails. Program should be written to allow you to report the coin flips. In other words, the entire program is in a loop, and you will ask the user if they want to repeat. All right, so let's think about that. So I won't give away all of this, but I may give away a piece here now. So in this case, this program here, let's think about how could I create this so this entire program is in a loop. Well, welcome to Guess My Number. So I have to think about where I'm going to start my loop at. So let's just ask, let's do it this way. And then we'll go through and see if we can modify it really quickly. So they're at the end of the game. So let's just print, do you want to play again? And then we're going to input. All right. So I've got an input, but I need to make it equal to something. So we need a variable name for this. So I'm going to call this repeat. Equals input type yes or no. All right. So I've got a value for repeat. It would be handy if we could just say, hey, I need to jump up here. But what I really need to do is put all of this game inside of a loop. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a loop. So while repeat equals so now I've created a loop. Here's the problem. I need to go in and I'm going to have to carefully set all of this in one indent level. And other tools, so once we get to show you some other editing tools, you're going to see that you'll be able to grab an entire code block and move it in another line. So if I try it with this one, we can try and see what it does. And it's going to go, oh, it does actually work. Never mind, just kidding. So they've gotten smarter with that. It didn't used to be able to do that in the idle environment. So now, I need this to actually get out of there. Hang on. That needs to actually go to the bottom of my program. So Control X, Control Copy. So now, I've taken this program and I've put all of this inside that block. Let's see what happens. Let's just give it a try. There's other ways we could do it, but let's see what happens. Oh, I didn't hit my double equals. There we go. Oh, so somewhere up here, I had an issue because it says repeat is not defined. This is the only way to learn, is try those things. So, I need to come up here, and somewhere in my top variables, I need to say repeat equals, and I need to give it a value because we're trying to compare it. So to start the program, if I put in as a no, let's see what happens. wait, why is it asking me to play again? Because when I put in no, it says, oh, nope, it's going to not run any of this content in this loop. It's going to come down directly down to this program down below. So a couple little things. That's driving me crazy. All right, so if I set that as yes, this loop will run as long as it doesn't change from that. So let's run it again. Oh, guess my number. You're a foolish guesser and could not guess a number. Oh, please guess a number. So we have a little problem with it. So we need to see why it's looping back like it was. So it seems to run through here. This says while repeat equals yes. So it did run this. So where does the guess a number come from here? So we never did get to this piece. So, So where is that different number? So I'm going to do this to help identify where we're at. So this is that idea of troubleshooting. So I want this as 1. And the next guess is number 2. So that will let me know which spot is actually running in there. So I'm going to try this again. So this is that idea of troubleshooting, trying to figure out what's going on. Please guess a number, and that's that first one. So, all right, 50. So I'm just following that pattern. It was 54. Please guess a number 1. Oh, so it is looping. It's looping. The problem is this down here. That's outside of that loop. We never changed this value. So I need to also take this and tab it in so it's in this same block here. So Control C to break that. I'm going to try to run this again. So guess a number. 2010. Once again, I was wrong. Yes or no? Oh, yay! So now it came down here and it ran. So I see one thing I got to do. It'll drive me crazy. All right. So I'm going to type a yes or a no. So I'm going to type yes. Let's see if that works. And it cycles up to the top again. Perfect. Now, again, I have some cleanup because it'd be nice to put in some blocks of space in there, and you know, we could certainly make it more attractive, but it seems to work. So let's see what happens. Now, what I did there, I hit enter for a number, and so again, it tried to take a null character and convert it to an integer. So we've got to come up with some ways to correct for that and fix that, but we can do that. So in fact, you could probably think of a way to do that right now using these while loops and if-then statements. So this is one way we move that entire program then into a loop. So in other words, I can ask if we want to run it again. It's not clean, it's not pretty, but it's the beginning. So we also have issues of what if they type a capital Y or a lowercase? Are those different? Yes. So if I run this, let me get all the way through there real quick. Do you want to play again? If I type a capital Y, it says, oh, nope, we're out of the program. Because a capital Y, so we could do some easy ones to do that. So while repeat equals yes, or repeat equals, so if somebody typed a capital Y, another way to do that. There might be a better way using that dotted notation and converting the input into a lowercase automatically. Might be a way to do it. We could do if-then statements to change those a little bit. But this is a way we can take an existing program or existing piece and we just keep modifying it and looking at it to do things. So we took our existing Guess My Number game. We now created that where it will run multiple times. And that's what we're looking at in this assignment. You're going to flip a coin 1,000 times. So you need to repeat the coin flip. So in other words, the whole program's in a loop and needs to run. So if you have any questions, please feel free to email me. I've also got Zoom set up. We can do some quick Zoom sessions. If you have questions, probably somebody else does. This does take some time and effort, and I wish I could shove it into our brains, but it takes a little time and effort to get this done. All right. If you have any questions, comments, please send some email, give me some love on Zoom, or get a hold of me in some other way. All right.